Hello and welcome to Secure Enterprise Browsers, an emerging alternative to virtual desktop infrastructure. Today's webinar is sponsored by Talon and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know if you have any technical issues. Browser refresh is going to fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a link for getting started with Talon. Also in there, you can find links to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, which is Actual Tech Media's collection of great printed resources on technology topics, as well as a link to the ATM Event Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and your colleagues. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters, and to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic content. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our guest today. We have Guy Harpak, who's product director at Talon, and we have Patrick Coble, who's a principal consultant for VDI Sec. So Patrick and Guy, it's great to have you here. And Patrick, I'm going to turn things over to you to get us started.
Scott, for the intros. Hello, I'm Patrick Coble, the VDI hacker, and we're going to talk about secure enterprise browsers, an emerging alternative to the virtual desktop infrastructure and just VDI in general. The application delivery landscape has drastically changed since the creation of modern business computing, and we've had a lot of eras. Most modern companies, depending on when they started their IT infrastructure, started with the AIX mainframe, Unix boxes, water-cooled giant things. And then, of course, we got to the PC, and then, of course, Mac. I'm not forgetting Mac. And that's when it all changed, especially in the corporate world, because at that time, some people had better computers at their home than they did at work. So that made everyone at the corporate world change how they did things. But then in the late 90s, I guess even really early 90s, is when RAS came out, remote access servers. So if anyone remembers what that box looks like, that is a rack that you would use to hook up a whole bunch of modems to, and people could dial in. And that basically started at Windows 2000, NT4, OS2 Warp, kind of in that era. And then 2003 is when it really became popular. So then that way, people could work from home on whatever device they had. They would dial in with their modem and they can access it there. This is before the internet. I know that sometimes that's weird for people, that there was a before the internet. And then VDI came along. Now the internet's, the .com bubbles already happened. And now, Citrix and VMware in 2007, 2008 really started that and went down that road, so that people that had those business applications that were Windows-based applications had a way to deliver them to users all over the world centrally and securely. And so VDI was the coolest thing since sliced bread. And it really replaced RDS in some cases, because one of the things that was happening is that many business applications were written for desktop operating systems. And when we were delivering them on server operating systems, they didn't work so hot. But when we delivered them over a virtual desktop, they did work because it was on the operating system that was intended. This is also when the cloud really wasn't very cloudy, and everybody had stuff in their data centers, and it caused you have to buy a bunch of servers, and you could get however many users per server, and that's kind of how your world went. And then mobile apps came basically 2010, 2012, somewhere in that range, when the iPhone came out in 2007. And once everyone wanted one of those phones, just like every person wanted a PC, now the corporate world was scrambling of, how do we manage this device? How do we secure it? How do we deliver an experience? And this is where companies like AirWatch, Mobile Iron, and a couple others came out. Even BlackBerry RIM did some good stuff. Citrix had some solutions too. And this was so that you could either manage the whole device, MDM, or you could manage the applications on it. So you could give it a secure email client, a secure chat client, and then deliver those corporate applications that every user should have to their mobile device, which was really, really kind of groundbreaking when it happened. Now it just kind of seems like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And then, browsers. We lived with Internet Explorer from 1995 to this year, when it officially died. And it had a good run. Probably IE7 for a couple years in the VDI world was the number one published application in the world. And it was because things were written for IE7 that did not work with IE8 or any other newer variant. So people were using Citrix and VDI and Horizon to deliver that application all over the world so that those web applications could keep working. Well, and then Chrome comes in. Now, Chrome's been around for a while, but one thing that happened is Microsoft killed its own Internet Explorer that it had loved for almost, 30 years, and replaced it with Chrome. And so Microsoft Edge came around, a Chromium variant, and now those browsers are kind of that new application delivery landscape. So we went from mainframe that used to take up, a couple hotel rooms worth of a server computer to a mobile phone in your pocket to now a browser that's in your pocket and on your computer, whether it's your work computer or your home computer. And that's where you're probably doing a good amount of your work. And so that's where all this came in. So when we look at this, remote work in general has become the new normal. With the COVID-19 pandemic, it's 2022. It didn't really help corporate real estate as workers were sent home. And it was kind of a mad dash in that 2020 March and April when people started getting sent home. And that was probably one of the big things that happened for VDI and VPNs is everybody was scrambling to get stuff done any way they could to meet the needs of now. Instead of 1%, 10% of their workers working remotely, it could have been anywhere from 30 to, in some places I've worked with, was over 100, right? So that was every single person was sent home. Corporate offices were closed. And, one of the things that has happened is we can also look just across the landscape of what's going on in the world right now. And we are consistently seeing those physical offices closing all over the corporate world as work from home kind of settles in. Now, there are some places and businesses that are asking people to come back and do their thing at the office, which is good. But so many of those same places have closed lots of regional offices, and that's because work from home is there. And one of the worst things that happened in that COVID-19 pandemic was that with that worst rush from working from home is that no one had an idea how they were going to patch and manage a lot of these systems. So a lot of these computers had been on people's desks for the past 10 years. And we were using traditional management solutions for that operating system, the browser, their applications like SCCM, or maybe even fancy stuff like BigFix and Tanium. And when we sent them home, now if they weren't on the VPN, that computer could not ET phone home anymore and get its updates. So that was a big problem. And when I would do security audits in that period, and still a little bit right now, we find computers that have not been patched in months, and in some cases up to a year because of how they did it. And that's where a lot of solutions came out. And that's where VDI and VPNs really kind of ramped back up. But now there's a new player, right? The enterprise browser and everything else. So with the rise of web and SaaS applications, I think all of us in IT have been waiting a long time for this. It's kind of like going paperless, right? We never thought that could happen, but we are definitely webifying a lot of things. And one of the first things that kind of came in the rise of a lot of these applications and how we would deliver it, we could use Windows applications and we would use VDI. So if you had a Windows app, we use VDI. And then if we had mobile applications, we would use MDM or MAM, right? So we're going to manage the whole device or just our corporate suite of applications. And then we had regular SaaS applications, right? And so that's where the confluence of VDI and SaaS applications met for the first time. And that was because Citrix and VMware, kind of the two big players in this space, especially in the SaaS space, could publish Workday in the same application UI that the user was used to, and give the user access to request their PTO and do their things. And of course, there's thousands, tens of thousands of other applications, but that's always a good example for it. And then that's where the rise of the workspace came. So if we see here, we've got Citrix, we've got Microsoft or Citrix and VMware, and then we have Okta. And then you have Okta ping one login. And so these are also aggregating all the things too. So in some cases, they're aggregating web and SaaS services, but they may also be aggregating VDI deployments. And in most VDI deployments, someone has a published application to some web application. And so these have been the gateway to Windows applications and SaaS applications, and you can access it on your mobile device. But then one other thing came in, and that's when Chromium came around. This is when kind of that secure enterprise browser space started. And that's, what we're here to talk about with Guy and the team at Talon. And so that's really, really, really interesting that we've went kind of full circle, that we started from, racks of computers that are water cooled. And now we're really talking about a browser as a primary application that people do their work in. And that's one of the things that, when I started I'm doing a VDI and a browser audit right now, that was one of the things that really caught my eye, is when I saw what some of the secure enterprise browsers were doing. I was like, this is a really interesting space, because of what we're talking about right here on this slide is the common VDI and DaaS challenges, right? So if you have a Windows application and you need to deliver to your endpoint securely, this is the way, right? And so it is the de facto kind of standard for those Windows or Linux applications, depending on which flavor you pick. But, it has common challenges. The biggest is the cost, right? It's very expensive per user, along with wherever you're going to do it. So you've got to figure out what your user requirements are. I need a VM, I need 2 vCPU, 4 gigs of RAM, or I need a little bit beefier box. You pick whichever broker you want. So that's Citrix, VMware, Microsoft AVD, Cloud PC, WorkSpot, LeoStream. There's a whole pile of them out there. So there's lots of good options. And then wherever you're going to actually run your compute. So whether that is going to be in your local data center or in a cloud or in multiple clouds. If it's in your local data center, you have the challenges of buying the right number of servers, the right number of storage, the networking, set all that up so it's as fast as humanly possible so that your users can get that good experience. But with VDI compared to, an enterprise browser for sure, is, your complexity is definitely going to vary. And it can become a pretty complex system because there's going to be a lot of pieces, depending on if it's Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, or other solutions. There's going to be your actual machine that people use. And then there's going to be the brokers, the license server, the web interface, the connection server, the UAG. It's just kind of like VDI acronym soup. And so depending on where you put your compute at will determine how complex you may have to make your VPCs, network security groups, and things like that. And then your performance. This is something we as a collective VDI industry has been kind of challenged with since inception, 2007. Technology, NVMe, solid state drives, and fancy graphics from NVIDIA and NVIDIA Grid and stuff like that have come a long way, where now we can make a Pixar movie on a virtual desktop and build a car from Peugeot, which is like amazing. I would have never thought that, but I also thought that Mario 3 was like the best graphics there ever was, right? Because he had his little tail and the feather. So that performance is going to vary on your user requirements, like what the user actually needs and what your compute location is. And so these are kind of the big three challenges of just a traditional VDI and DaaS solution. And that's kind of what really struck me when I started looking at the secure browser space, I was like, wow, this is a whole lot simpler. It's cheaper, and I can get the same user performance when I have those web applications. So when should you use that kind of secure enterprise browser? Your mileage is always going to vary based on your solutions, right? And so the big questions I've asked is, do I have a bunch of web applications that are critical to my business, right? And it's probably not just one. There's probably more than one website. The most common that everyone always talks about is Salesforce, right? Salesforce, your CRM, where you keep all the stuff. And now there's a lot of EMRs that are like that too. And there's some banking apps and things like that are in there too. So do you have web applications that host sensitive or corporate customer data? So if you have any of those, so we have something that's critical to business, we have something that's very sensitive that's in a web app form, then this is going. What is preventing your users right now in their virtual desktop, in their computer, at their house, in their jammies, from copying and pasting, from printing, from saving the files off that sensitive website that they have access to? And in most cases, when I do audits, there's nothing stopping that, right? Like if you publish them Salesforce and they gave them username and password, you could log on from your house and you could sit there and copy and paste and take all the things you wanted. And so that's a big problem. And if we know how crazy our security and compliance world is right now, it's almost a no-no zone. And so what threat protection do you have for these web applications? In many cases, there's not anything, right? Because especially if it's internet accessible, anyone can access it from anywhere. There's no restrictions. And so then that creates all kinds of new problems that we've never had. Is now there is a application that we don't host. We can barely control. We can control username, password, and maybe some access depending on how you're doing SAML authentication, but that's as far as we can go. When those people are accessing things on their browser, we can't control those settings in some cases. Now, if they're coming from a managed device, maybe. But even in a managed device, depending on if they're connected to the VPN or on a virtual desktop or just on a traditional computer, just hanging out on the internet, your mileage is definitely going to vary on what you can do. And I see this a lot, is a lot of organizations, BYOD was kind of its thing, but there's still a lot of places that have managed and unmanaged devices that continually access their deployments. And so if we have unmanaged devices accessing our systems, and even managed devices that are accessing those browsing web applications, then this is where this secure enterprise browser space is really going to make a big impact. And what we kind of see is this is where, a common work style meets a built-in solution. So this is a purpose-built solution for anybody that is trying to use a browser-based web application. And there's lots of use cases for this, right? So there's M&As, as you maybe bought some other company or another company's assimilating to your Borg. You can go ahead and use this enterprise browser to help make that easier so that they can access the corporate applications that they need with the exact security and controls that you want, and without the cost of VDI of 30, 40, 50 bucks or more per user. And one of the studies even from Google was 75% of users spend their time in a browser, and it's become the primary method to deliver, one of the two ways to deliver malware. So your browser and your email client are the primary conduits for all bad activity, right? It's where I went to a bad URL for credential harvesting. I went to a bad URL and downloaded a payload and executed it, or I got emailed that thing and it was a macro or it was some other thing. So if you have a web application that drives your business and security is paramount, then evaluating any secure enterprise browser is definitely what you want to do, because if that web application matters and you really need that security control and visibility, then that's what it's going to do. If you just are delivering it on a traditional endpoint or even a VDI solution, you may not be getting all the things you need out of that web application. So when we look at any secure enterprise browser, we want to make sure that we're looking for role-based access, right? So that way I can make sure that if someone in this group has these things that they can do, someone in this group can have those things. We want to make sure we can control web access so that we can say that everybody can go everywhere or everybody can only go to these websites. And we want to be able to, within that web session, control what can go in and what can come out of that session is really important too, right? We don't want people to be able to copy paste. We might want to put a watermark on it. Might want to make sure they can't even go into developer mode to see the code to try to copy out a table. And so we want to be able to also control extensions. Extensions have become a huge part of, especially the browsing world. And so we need to be able to control those. We don't want people to be able to download any extension, because there have been many, account takeovers of previous extensions or extensions that have become malicious because someone does a malicious update. So you want to control those extensions, and then you want to have other data protection related items. You want to make sure that you can control what's coming in and out of that system. And so this is where Talon comes in. And Guy, let's take it away and let's show them the coolness that you guys have over there. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you all of the participants, everyone, for joining. My name is Guy Harpak. I'm product director at Talon, and I'll take the next few minutes to tell you a little bit about our product and about Talon in general, and also share a quick demo of what we can do. As Patrick mentioned, the browser is today a major application delivery method, and also an opportunity for you to allow hybrid work and to allow many other methods of work that are being used in the business world today. Let's talk a little bit about what security capabilities we have in the browser. First of all, we are based on a secure and isolated Chromium-based workspace. So Chromium is the underlying open source project for all of the major consumer browsers like Chrome and Microsoft Edge. And we have reduced that attack surface over this basis of the browser. And we added security mechanisms in order to help you isolate all of your enterprise web applications and your enterprise interactions from the endpoint where you run this workspace at. Probably essentially giving you a secure workspace, an alternative to VDI and to many other security options. On top of that, and thanks to our presence inside the browser, we provide data leakage prevention. So we prevent data leakage between web applications or from web applications to the endpoint by monitoring and blocking forbidden clipboard actions like copy paste, screen capture, even data masking in order to reduce the risk of someone taking a photo of the screen. And of course, we encrypt all the files. All of that with a granularity that allows you to prevent leakage to the endpoint and to prevent specific users from leaking data or specific types of data from any website you choose and SaaS application. Second, we deliver threat protection. The browser is a major method or attack vector, a way for attackers to get into your organization's data and systems. We can monitor everything and block access to malicious domains, scan all files that are being downloaded, reduce the risks of anti-phishing, and also the emerging attack surface of extension-based attacks. Now, in addition, we take extreme care in securing the browser itself against browser-based attack. We have a lot of information around it, and we are one of the first contributors in our category to the open source project of Chromium in order to help reduce the attack surface over all browsers in the world. Third security capability that I want to touch is zero trust. So we are all implementing zero trust approaches for most of the organizations across the enterprise. We take the browser and help you to provide granular access for SaaS applications, actions inside SaaS applications, data, all of it based on user, on context such as the device posture, the network, the time of the day, and allowing you high level of granularity when users access your enterprise data. And last but very important, SaaS visibility and protection. Again, thanks to the presence in the browser, we can see all of the actions done inside SaaS applications, allowing you to have complete visibility, audit logs, and also identify any kind of shadow SaaS, shadow IT that your users might be accessing without you being aware, moving to the level of permissions and specific actions inside these applications. Now, since we want to focus on VDI alternative, I thought that it makes sense to bring one of the use cases that we experienced with a customer and talk a little bit about why this customer chose to look for a VDI alternative and what can be done out of the browser. So in this case, we are talking about a large European company looking for an alternative for VDI in order to help them secure the use case of contractors from call centers accessing their enterprise applications. These applications are SaaS applications, applications that are hosted in the cloud and managed in the cloud, and also some applications that are hosted on-premise. Today, this company is working with the VDI because this is the only solution they had available for them, and they experienced a lot of issues with it. Performance issues leading to complaints from the end users, which could be contractors, which could lead to difficulties around the business. Frequent downtime and those incidents can affect all users, and they experience it more and more as they transition to the new method of working and then need to onboard new users, new contractors, because this is how their business now operates. And then these downtimes affect all of the users across the organization. In addition, high operational costs. So just as Patrick mentioned, the cost of VDI, if you take the total cost of ownership, is large, and there's the acronym soup of what you need to cover, and there's support and maintenance, and you need to help your end users work with your solution. So you reach a very high operational cost, especially if you have VDI on-prem, but also for DaaS applications in the cloud. And last but not least, they found it hard to scale. So as I mentioned, in the beginning, they worked with the VDI solution and it seemed probably okay. But then would try to scale to more and more contractors, more and more end users working for these companies. They found it hard to scale the VDI operation, both hardware, software, and the support and maintenance, and were looking in the market for an alternative. In this use case, Talon is deployed to call centers worldwide in order to replace the VDI agents. Now, deployment sounds scary, but we pride ourselves in the ability to deploy very quickly. That means that installing us on an endpoint can take maybe less than a minute. And this is all the deployment means, because the end user experiences basically the same user experience of installing Chrome, Firefox, something that you might have done yourself, and then you know and familiar with how easy it is. So within hours, without downtime, zero learning curve, since we're talking about a browser, those contractors were able to start using Talon, and this is their alternative to the existing VDI agent, achieving improved performance, basically same performance as they would without the security solution in place, without the remote access solution in place. Direct access to the application with no remote sessions, nothing that has to be managed in order to allow these contractors to access the applications, and controls that are above and beyond what they are used to have from the VDI alternative. And very important, now there's no single point of failure for affecting all of the users. Now, the incentive is security, the incentive is usability, but also the availability of the business has improved dramatically when they transition to the VDI. Now, in this case, the browser was also used in order to access the on-premise applications, and it was done with a strong authentication that we can enforce even more with the browser. As I mentioned, we are working with a zero trust approach based on existing zero deployment IT infrastructure for the organization. This is one use case for VDI replacement. I do want to elaborate a little bit about additional use cases we have. We like to divide it into unmanaged devices, devices that are basically not managed by your IT organization, and managed devices, devices that you manage, but you have a specific use case where you have to use the secure browser. So, example of unmanaged devices, outsourcing and contractors, which we touched, but also franchises where you don't control the actual IT of your end users. M&A and subsidiaries, you might have to, you might just acquire the company and they're managed by another IT organization, and you want to quickly onboard them to your enterprise systems. So you do it within seconds, minutes, or hours by deploying this browser and achieving a unified level of security that fits your standards. Knowledge workers bring in their own PC, frontline and field service workers working with tablets or PCs, video replacement will be touched, and also supply chain and other business partners you're working with. For the managed devices, we have many cases where you need either for privileged users that have privileged access to some of your web or SaaS applications, tighter means of control, or single purpose application, which is what we call the cases where you use the browser only to access a very strict or application, but also general replacement or displacement or lack of reducing the reliance for other security mechanisms, like for example, RBI, Secure Web Gateway, implementing zero trust for the web applications, getting visibility and protection for SaaS, and a very unique use case which we encounter where what you wish is to separate the personal browsing from the work browsing. So basically, you allow your users to use your standard browsers for the work related tasks, but you want them to have the capability to browse to personal websites, and for that you would use Talon Work. In order to provide some more color into it, I want to go over a quick demo. This will allow you to visualize a little bit what can be done and what does the browser look like, and also maybe imagine what can be done beyond, which you'll be able to learn if you book a demo with us after this webinar. Okay, now let's go over a quick demo of Talon Work so we can have some color into the capabilities of what can be done outside of the browser. What you're seeing here is what the user would first see when they log into the browser for the first time. Welcome to your new workspace with quick onboarding guide allowing them to import bookmarks and settings that they use to work with their browsers. You'll see this logo here of a company called Everest. This is a made-up company we made for the sake of the demo, and the entire browser will be branded according to this company. When your users are working, they will work from this workspace if you choose to do it, which is also branded to your company, and you can also send all kind of updates and nice messages to your end users from here. Now let's go over a quick data protection scenario and see what can be done with a secure browser. Let's imagine your user is working on a secure document and they want to copy a piece of text from Salesforce into this document. So I'm working here on Office 365. I'm going into Salesforce and I'm copying this line of text, which is of course sensitive, but there's no reason to prevent pasting of this text into, for example, an Office document. So if I try to paste it here, of course, everything is pasted just fine. This is because the transition of data here is between Salesforce, which is an enterprise website, and Office 365, which is also an enterprise application. But what happens if the user is trying to paste this piece of text into Pastebin, which is an unsanctioned application? Then, according to the policy that you set, Talon Work would capture this event and block it. We call it, by the way, a relay attack, where the browser or the endpoint is used to leak data between an enterprise application and an unsanctioned website. This is one form of leakage. We also want to prevent leakage to the endpoint itself. So let's say, for example, the user saves this file, and this is an unmanaged endpoint. You don't know exactly what's happening there, but your user is saving a sensitive PDF file, and you want to make sure that you don't lose control over this data. So now I downloaded this file as PDF. You notice there's a little lock icon right next to it. The reason for this lock icon, or what this lock icon means, is that the file is encrypted. So basically, if I try and open it from my computer, it would only open inside Talon Work. The file is encrypted. It's meaningless if, for example, a piece of malware steals it. Just to show it, I also have a policy in place here that allows users to decrypt this file. So if the user chooses to decrypt the file, then the file would revert into a PDF state, and then it can be opened without a PDF viewer and just be standard PDF file that you allow your users to open on their computer. Now, the policy that allows your end user to decrypt with a zero trust approach can be different for users, applications, and also can be based on the posture of the device. So one of the things that we're doing is continuously monitor the posture of the device, both for things like security, but also for things like whether it's a managed device. So you might choose for specific users only in specific cases or instances of posture to allow decryption, and in others you would prevent it. I do want to show another quick use case of what we do with SaaS applications, just to show, to display the visibility we have in there. So let's imagine I try to log in into Box, but instead of logging in with my corporate Everest account, I try to log in with my personal account. Now, this could be an issue because first, you don't monitor this account, and second, users can use this account in order to leak data. What we are doing is allowing you to prevent this personal login by monitoring the types of accounts that your users are using. So that when the user is trying to log in with his or her Gmail account, they won't be able to log in, or any other personal account. But when they try to log in with a corporate account, they can log in into Box and do their standard work for your company. Not only do you control and can prevent the login and do it based on account and do it based on other zero trust approaches that you wish, but you can also control things that are happening inside the SaaS application. So here, for example, I have a policy in place that when I try to download a file, I will be asked for another security code. Here for the demo environment, we don't go through the complete loop of the phone, but just a fixed security code. And after the user inputs the right security code, the file will be downloaded. In this case, it will also be scanned. Now, just imagine you could do that from one solution, the TimeWork browser, into all of your SaaS applications across the enterprise. This is a quick snippet, quick peek into what can be done. You can imagine furthermore what you can do around data protection, threat protection, zero trust, and use this visibility in order to raise the posture of the security in your organization. Thank you very much. I'll just share a little bit about Talon. Talon has a world-class team, and I'm not talking about myself. Our founders, Ofer Benoon and Odd Bulbarov, both seasoned entrepreneurs. We were selected by industry leaders like Microsoft and CrowdStrike, who we partner with in order to deliver the best security organization across your enterprise. We are a Gartner Cool Vendor from 2022, and I'm also proud to share that we won the RSA Conference Innovations Box in 2022 last year. We raised $126 million so far from distinguished high-profile VC firms and distinguished individuals like Mr. George Kurtz, founder and CEO of CrowdStrike, Mr. John Thompson, and Mr. Mark Anderson. Thank you for taking the time. Please log into our website, book a demo, and let's keep on talking. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, Patrick, great presentation, Guy. Really appreciate the presentation and the demo. It was really eye-opening. Good stuff. We do have some questions coming in here from the audience, so let's get to those. Patrick, this first one looks like a good one for you. They're asking, where are customers in evaluating DaaS instead of VDI, and when are secure enterprise browsers a potential alternative?
Yeah, I mean, I deal with a whole lot of people over the past couple of years that have really transitioned from the traditional VDI in your data center to a DaaS service. And then sometimes DaaS means that it's just the control plane. So that means I don't have to patch all these random little servers that are the monkeys in the middle there. But this means that sometimes I'm also running that workload in the data center. So if you're evaluating, if an enterprise secure browser could be something you want to look at, I would look at what you have published right now in your current VDI deployment, what people are accessing, whether that's a published application or within the operating system, Windows or Linux, and look at how many web applications you're looking at. Look at that content firewall and see how many websites they're using. And you will probably know if you have a big browser web SaaS application that your whole company depends on. And if that answer is yes, and it's a certain percentage of your VDI users, then this could be put together, or it could be a separate solution for them. So depending on the number of web applications, you definitely want to look at that and evaluate if it's right for you.
Okay, super. This next question here, I think it's for Guy. They're asking, how do I deploy it and onboard users? How much time does it take?
Thank you. So first of all, great question. And this is one of our focus areas when we built it and designed the product. As I mentioned a little bit during the presentation, usually deployment takes for a single user up to 30 seconds. When we onboard the company just to connect to the enterprise systems, we usually schedule a 45 minutes meeting up to 1 hour. Usually it takes up to 30 minutes just to connect to all the enterprise systems because we proud ourselves of the ease of integration. And then deployment, it can be done self-service or pushed to the different devices within hours. You can have your entire organization running on Talon work.
Wow, that's really impressive. This next question, they're asking, do you see this complementing our existing VDI environment, or is it meant for a complete replacement? So, Patrick, maybe that's a good one for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can definitely complement a solution, but if, just like we said, even from the previous question, is if you have a lot of web applications that drive your business, then this is something you really need to look at. Whereas if VDI is driving your business and you just have Windows applications and you don't really do anything in the browser, you could probably keep doing VDI. But one thing that I have found as doing some of the browser audits that I've been doing with Talon was that there's going to be a percentage of users in many organizations that could benefit from this solution. If we think about just your accounts payable team, right, that's logged in to all the banking websites, that's in charge of paying invoices, keeping up with whatever, accounting system, but also paying the banks, this could be a great place for them to work, that you can make sure they can't copy and paste stuff out of that banking website and control that. And in VDI, is that possible? It's possible depending on which solution, but you're gonna have to turn a bunch of knobs. This is purpose built to secure web applications, and so that's where I think the delineation is. Like web applications, go to the Secure Enterprise browser, definitely evaluate it, see if it works for you, and then your traditional Windows, Linux applications, VDI is still there, right? So I could definitely see some people having a VDI client on their local machine and having Talon work and having a Secure Enterprise browser, and that way they can do both sides of their job. So their Windows applications, they're doing this, and then for those web applications, or just ensuring that they're having a safe browsing experience while they're at home or at the office or in the airplane. And that's where I think this space is really exciting for me, which is why I'm doing one of those analysis on this to try to figure out which one of the browsers is the best.
Thank you, Patrick. And
Okay,
if I may
great
add, Scott,
context.
just for
Yeah,
things we see with
please.
customers, and what Patrick touched is exactly the case. We also see many instances where the incentive is not necessarily to replace all of the VDI, but just to reduce the cost, to reduce the reliance of VDI. So let's call it VDI reduction.
Yep.
And also where the access to the VDI is done outside of a browser. So outside of Talon work, just instead of the client, to have additional levels of security. So this is also a side-by-side use case we see.
I'd agree.
Excellent. Another question here. This one, Guy, I think this is one for you. How do I make sure access is done from Talon and not from another browser?
Great question. We have a complete set of technological and product solutions around enforcement. And without going into the details, and of course, I'll be happy to share with anyone on a follow-up meeting the technical details of how it's done. We have methods of strong authentication of the browser, relying on known thrown authentication mechanisms that actually make the browser a form of let's say, a factor of authentication, and we verify access is done through the browser. So we either enforce it on the service level, the service, for example, Salesforce, won't allow connecting outside from other browsers where they're not on work, or enforce it in additional control of credentials, or by managed endpoints. We just manage the endpoint and we make sure that the browser is or that the Talon browser, sorry, is the only browser allowed to access the application. So we have a complete set of enforcement, and so far it works for all of the services on our customers' environments.
Gotcha. All right, excellent. Well, Guy, Patrick, it's about all the time we have today, but really appreciate the presentations, the demos, and all the insights here in the Q&A. Thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you
Thank God
very
for the
much, Scott,
opportunity.
and you, Patrick. Thank you, crowd.
All right, and before we wrap up, we have one more piece of business. It's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that gift card today is Chad Ringenberg from North Dakota. So congratulations to Chad Ringenberg. We'll be in touch to get your cards. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Talon for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a great rest of your day.